Hey, welcome back to the ZT Audio channel. Today, talking about more supernatural secrets in Fantom OS version 1.50. Previous video in this series, we went briefly over just what's in the SuperNatural acoustic engine and showed you how there's a lot more in there than even what Roland announced. What I need to do in this video, this isn't a video I planned on making, but I think in the previous video I didn't explain something right, or I got the words twisted in my head or something like that. And here's what it has to do with. The SuperNatural synth engine is not present in the Fantom. So those SuperNatural synth sounds that were in the Integra 7, the FA series, the JDXA, the Jupiter 50, and the Jupiter 80, that engine that creates those sounds are not in here. But the sounds are actually in here. The Fantom has a much better, much expanded PCM VA, virtual analog, engine in it that we're calling a Zen-Core. It's one of the Zen-Core engines. And it's a lot more expanded than what you had in those previous instruments with the SuperNatural synth sounds. But those SuperNatural synth sounds are still in here. They're ported over to the Fantom, and I'll show you how to find them. I'm in an initialize scene. I always like to start there. I'm going to turn down everything but Zone 8. Make sure I select Zone 8, otherwise we're not going to hear anything. I'm going to go over here and hit the pad button, and I'm going to go over, I'm going to zoom into that, hit the enter button, and I'm going to click on over here to PRD. There's a bunch of sounds that start with PRD. Boop, boop, boop. This one's JP8 strings. I'll zoom in on the screen here because I want you to see something, and that is that right here, if we look at it, that's bank PRD, and that's preset bank D. Preset bank D are all the SuperNatural synth sounds ported over to the new Zen-Core engine in the Fantom. So if you're looking for those sounds, they're all here. If you unlock the category select here, boom, you can page on over here and you can turn that to lock or unlock. I'm going to unlock it, go back up here to this. I can just start paging through all the stuff in PRD. JP8 strings. And if you might notice there, I'm playing with a little bit of aftertouch. I'm pressing down after I hit the notes to bring in that filter opening up. The cutoff frequency opening up. The SuperNatural synth sounds that are in the Fantom, by the way, are some of the better sounds if you're trying to play around with aftertouch. They seem to be programmed to respond a little bit better. The aftertouch is a little tight, I'd call it, on the Fantom. You have to really lean into the keys to get it happening, but with a little bit of practice, you can get good results. That's just a bonus message there. So as we go through these, we'll notice we're still in the synth pad group over here, and we're in synth pad strings. I'm up to about the 48th sound. I'll get to a certain point, and you will notice a couple of things, and let's see what this happens. I think this happens about 146 or 156 or something like that, if I remember correctly. Okay, it's probably 196. When I get up to 196, you will notice horror pad, and then 197. Watch what happens in the instrument category select here and here on the category area. Ooh, I noticed that this jumped over from pad to FX, and this jumped into the pulsating category within that FX instrument group. So, but I'm still PRD. It's just 196 is in the synth pad group, 197 is in the FX group under the pulsating category. And as if I go through those, I will note at some point, I jumped over to the choir, and I'm now in PRD Vox Choir, the Vox Choir group, and I'll have several there. Oh, and I jumped again to the scat group. Now I jumped over to the synth brass. And that shows you that in every category almost there are some SuperNatural synth sounds, and they are organized so that you can get through them any way you want. You can kind of say, well, I'm looking for a brass sound. hit brass, go in here, go over to the PRD group, and say, all right, I want JP8 brass 1. Okay, or you could do what I was doing there before, which is I've got the category unlocked, and I'm just going to go through them numerically because I want to just look for all supernatural synth sounds, and I don't care what category they're in. We're still in synth brass right now. You'll notice at a certain point, we'll get up here. Oh, we jumped over to pads. Now we're back into synth polykey. And at a certain point, we'll jump categories all the way along here. And I'm just going to scroll through this. Jumped over to bass. Bunch of good bass sounds of the Fantom. You'll want to check those out. And I'm getting up to about 700 here. 800 sounds, synth leads. A lot of good leads in there. Man, if you can't find a good lead on the Fantom, I want to know what's wrong with you. Again, jumps over. And we'll get all the way up to, I think it's about 1100 and something. 1100 sounds in here are supernatural synth sounds. And then, yeah, it gets up to, what are we at? 1109. There are 1109 sounds in the PRD group. Those are all supernatural synth sounds that have been ported over to the Fantom. So that's point number 1. Point number 2, I want to show you what's different in the VA engine, the Zen-Core engine, whatever you want to call it, that's different than what you had in Supernatural Synth before. So I'm going to hit the menu button. I'm going to say Tone Edit. Menu, what do I want to do? I want to, yeah, we'll do Tone Edit. And one of the things I'll show you here is, what am I in? Not a sound I want to use. Let's find a usable sound. How's that sound? Get over here to synth. Maybe a brass. Pretty good. Now that's in bank PRA, so it's a synth brass sound, but we can play around with that. That's not one of the supernatural synth sounds, but it may be programmed the same way anyway. Let's take a look in here, and we'll note that right now we've got waves used, and those are PCM waves. One thing you'll note right off the bat from the old VA series, the FA series, was you had 3 partials available. On the Fantom, the new Zen-Core engine, you have 4 partials available. That is a significant increase in capability. We used to kind of think of this as like every partial is almost like its own Juno 106. It's got, all the parts that make up a whole synthesizer, a single oscillator synthesizer. So you've almost got like four oscillator synthesizers here. It's not quite that, but that's a good way to think of it. If we go up here and we say oscillator type, and I say, now notice that I have partial 1, 2, 3, and 4 all selected for editing. That's what the yellow means, is we're going to edit these all at the same time. And I switch that to a VA. Now it's a VA. I'm going to say what oscillator parameter. I'm going to turn them all to a saw wave. No big deal there, right? We can go into pro mode. We can take a look at a bunch of different stuff here. Let's see, oscillator type VA. And then where it really starts to get better than the old Supernatural Synth engine is when we start getting into here to LFOs. I've got 2 LFOs and 2 step LFOs. That's a significant increase in capability from the Supernatural Synth engine, but that's not really the biggest part of it. If we cruise on down here, we will see something called matrix control. Matrix control, if you watched my previous video on that, if you haven't, you really need to. If you watch my previous video on that, that's where we can get in here and we can do all these cool routings of modulations and stuff like that. We can make velocity do things. We can make the pitch bend wheel and the paddles do separate things, and the S3, S2, and S1 switches do stuff. All kinds of things we can do this. We can assign things to foot pedals. You really couldn't do that under SuperNatural Synth. And believe it or not, there were things like on my FA and even on the JDXA that I've got sitting to my left here, that were really frustrating to me because you can't do them. There's no matrix control over the SuperNatural Synth sounds. So I wanted to do a simple thing on the JDXA, like I want to have Aftertouch bring in both, open up the filter, make it a little bit louder, and at the same time bring in the LFO, just like I was, just like if I was using a, the standard modulation wheel to bring in an LFO on the pitch for a vibrato effect. You can't do that, and it's really such a common thing that you can do with a lot of analog synthesizers that it was very disappointing to me. But now, with the Zen-Core engine, all those options are available. I have full matrix control over PCM-based sounds or over virtual analog-based sounds. All that stuff I couldn't do before in the SuperNatural Synth engine, I can now do it. I've got full matrix control. So, correction, the SuperNatural secret is that there actually are all the SuperNatural synth tones, the factory tones, are ported over the Fantom. And then the second SuperNatural secret that's in this video is that the new engine is a tremendous expansion over the previous SuperNatural synth engine. So we don't care that we don't have the engine. We've got all those factory sounds to start with. We can do anything with the new Zen-Core engine that we could do with SuperNatural synth. And we can do a whole lot more with the new Zen-Core engine than we could ever do with the SuperNatural Synth engine. Those are the SuperNatural secrets for today. I'll be back with part 3 in this series, digging into some of the SuperNatural acoustic engines a little bit more and show you what options they give you for more expressive and realistic acoustic sounds. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.